In the autumn of 2011, first noticed Chen Xiaoyu in the C++ class of the computer science department of a certain university in Guiyang. She was the only girl in the class who dared to interrupt me. When I was explaining the principle of pointers, when she raised her hand, the faded cartoon wristband on her sleeve was exposed, just like the one my wife always wore in college. When she asked in Mandarin with a Guizhou accent, "Teacher, is a memory leak like a leaking faucet?" My hand holding the chalk paused for a moment. This metaphor was exactly the same as what my wife said when explaining database affairs. A typical compilation of code in life. My teaching method is considered unusual among second-tier colleges. In the first class, we never talked about variable declaration. Instead, we opened the fighting game we wrote ourselves. When the little monster was hit and shouted, "What are you doing?" the boys laughed their heads off. Most of the girls were looking down at their phones. Only Chen Xiaoyu suddenly raised her hand and said, "Teacher, can I have a try?" When she was operating, she died in the first boss battle. But the light in her eyes when she restarted the game reminded me of my wife staying up late to revise her thesis back then. The same kind of stubbornness that knew she would hit a wall, but still insisted on bumping into it. This similarity extends into a peculiar resonance after class. She asked me if I could learn programming if my English was not good. Instinctively, I wanted to say, "You must pass CET4." But the words on the tip of my tongue turned into, "There are only a few keywords." Later, I learned that her junior high school English teacher had ridiculed her for pronouncing sounds like American farmers herding cattle, which reminded me of my wife's constant complaints about her Mandarin with a Cantonese accent, when she implemented the percent operator function with just over a dozen lines of code. I stared at the redundant type conversions on the screen and suddenly recalled my wife's lovely slips of the mouth that she always said. Tomorrow's Minger, all in clumsy yet sincere ways, she was fighting against the rules of the world. Emotional memory addressing in old computers in the spring of 2012. Chen Xiaoyu asked me to buy a second-hand computer for 2,500 yuan. When I rummaged through the idle notebook, I suddenly recalled the scene where my wife once forced her old mobile phone into a poor student. When I was reinstalling the system overnight, I deliberately modified the file timestamps and changed the desktop to an extremely ugly landscape picture. But when she felt the dust in the keyboard gap, I saw the same light flashing in her eyes as when my wife found out that I had secretly fixed her worn-out sweater. Later, she rushed into the office with 4,000 yuan in her hands. The money was pushed around like a table tennis ball. When I finally accepted it, she said slyly, "The broken label is depreciated." This tone was very much like the way my wife was bargaining with me. On Christmas Eve, she gave me an apple wrapped like a torch. In the greeting card, she wrote a piece of code with chaotic logic in C++. The last sentence, "Hope we can be your medicine," made me burst into tears suddenly in the taxi. The driver advised me in Guiyang dialect, "When the east is dark, the west is bright." But I recalled what my wife once said, "I'm happy even when I have a cold with you." There are 3 obvious null pointer risks in the code. Just like she didn't know that her homophonic joke of "there s no cure" precisely hit the lonely memory address of me wandering in a foreign land. A reloading of programming languages and life paradigms. In her junior year, she failed to get the Java elective course and called, crying her eyes out. I knew it was Lao Wang who had tampered with something behind the scenes, but deliberately teased her it might be a system bug. Later, I helped her get the qualification to sit as an observer. Seeing her sitting in the first row with a messy ponytail, I suddenly realized that the similarities between her and her wife had evolved from behavior to a certain survival philosophy. Just like Java gave up the concept of hands, but gained cross-platform compatibility, she gave up her father's definition of a money-losing product and could still laugh until tears even after working 2 hours at KFC. Just like the smug look on her face when she implemented the function with the most clumsy method in the code, saying, "I can handle it." Before graduation, she asked me how to choose between C++ and Java. I listed a bunch of technical parameters. But when she frowned, I suddenly realized that this question was just like when my wife asked me back then, "Stay in Beijing or come back to Guizhou with me?" In the end, she went to Beijing to do Java development, while I stayed in Guiyang to teach C++. Occasionally, we would chat about lambda expressions and smart pointers on WeChat. The code snippets in the chat box were just like the unspoken metaphors between US language is just a tool. What matters is what kind of life program we write with it. Even now, when I give lectures, I still think of Chen Xiaoyu, of her seriousness when she cut through the computer tags, and of how she used 4,000 yuan to reconstruct my perception of the teacher-student relationship. Just like template metaprogramming in C++, some emotions need time to be instantiated. Just like the garbage collection mechanism in Java, certain memories can be remarked inadvertently. When I wrote virtual void love equals 0 on the blackboard, I would occasionally look up at the first row, as if I could still see the girl who raised her hand and asked, "Teacher, can memory leaks be repaired?" And her figure had long been in the compilation unit of time, with a certain girl who was smiling and saying, "The water jujube is really delicious," in a rainy alley in Guizhou. Let's link into the same executable code.